Candy, that sweet, delectable treat that always brings a smile to our faces. From one sweet bite and taste, we are transformed to a time of joy and happiness. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines candy as a confection made with sugar and often flavor and filling. While that does give the basic definition of what candy is, candy can be so much more to the people who create it, sell it, and spread the sweet word of candy to the world. Located in beautiful Mount Sterling, Kentucky, Ruth Hunt Candy Company has proudly served the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Central Kentucky, and the world with its famous confections for now 100 years. Cream candy, Blue Monday bars, and bourbon balls are just a few of the famous products made here at the Ruth Hunt Candy Factory. Ruth Hunt Candy has been the official candy of Churchill Downs, Woodford Reserve bourbon balls, and served to United States presidents. Did you know that Ruth Hunt Candy all started a century ago by a young entrepreneur in her own kitchen? Join us as we take a look at the history of Ruth Hunt Candy, from small kitchen to modern factory. We look at how one special lady started a recipe for her bridge club that led to a modern sensation of confectionery delight. Sit back and watch a history of sweetness, 100 years of Ruth Hunt Candy. We start our film at 550 Maysville Road, Mount Sterling, Kentucky, at the Ruth Hunt Candy store, factory, and offices, sitting down and chatting with the current owners, Larry Kiesel and Toby Moore.
My name's Larry Kiesel, and I am the current owner of Ruth Hunt Candies for, I guess, the last 30 or so years.
I'm Toby Moore. I'm co-owner since 2016.
First time I heard about Ruth Hunt Candy was when I was in my backyard mowing my yard, and I had asked my neighbor, who was an attorney in Lexington, if she would ever come across a little business for sale. Either somebody was retiring or they were going out of business, bankrupt, whatever, preferably manufacturing something. That I had been working for the Urban County government for about 10 years in Lexington, and I had reached the limit of where I could go in that position, and said, if you ever find a little company like that, let me know. And she came over and said, there's this little candy company in Mount Sterling that makes the Blue Monday candy bar, and the owner is retiring, and I think you should go look at it. My first thoughts were, boy, this place needs a lot of work, but it's affordable, and it should be fun. And I had never thought about a food business. I thought about widgets or who knows what, but then this food candy company had come, and it wasn't like I grew up making candy my whole life or anything. It just seemed like a real challenge.
So how did all this begin for the Ruth Hunt Candy Company? 100 years as a business is a very rare feat. It all started in Mount Sterling, Kentucky, back during the early 1900s, with a lady named Ruth Hunt. Ruth Tharp was born in 1895 in Montgomery County, Kentucky. Ruth would go on to attend Richmond Normal School, now Eastern Kentucky University, where she studied education and teaching for the kindergarten levels. Ruth worked as a Sunday school teacher and as a stenographer after graduation, and married William T. Hunt in 1917. The young couple purchased a house in Mount Sterling, Kentucky on Wynn Street. William Hunt owned and operated a very successful creamery in Mount Sterling, both buying and distributing dairy products to the local area. After marriage, the now named Ruth Hunt entertained and served as a socialite for friends and family. Ruth and William welcomed their only child, Emily Hunt, in 1918, and Ruth Hunt stayed home to be an active mother and community member. Ruth Hunt always loved to cook and bake for her guests. She was a member of a local bridge club and provided for her bridge club her own recipe for old-fashioned cream candy. The bridge club, enjoying the candy so much, convinced Ruth Hunt to sell her candy so others in the area could try it. Ruth Hunt, then using her basement as her kitchen, began to make and sell Ruth Hunt candy to the public, starting in 1921. In 1929, the Hunts purchased the equipment of the Holiday Candy Company of Paris, Kentucky, and with the candy's popularity growing, Ruth Hunt and William opened their own factory on U.S. Highway 60, Mount Sterling, Kentucky, in 1931. William gave up his business at the creamery to become partners with his wife in the newly expanded business. The factory was pink. It had Pueblo Santa Fe architecture. The Hunts had traveled to New Mexico and decided to bring with them to the factory both the color and the architecture they saw in their travels. The color and the architecture were so unique to central Kentucky, it helped the passing cars along U.S. Highway 60 to pull off and have a glimpse of the interesting building and buy some candy along the way. In 1935, tragedy struck when fire destroyed most of the candy factory. Just one day after the fire, and even with the workers saying they could see the sky as they worked, the candy company went right back to business while the factory was rebuilt. Sitting inside his office at the U.S. Highway 60 factory, sadly, William Hunt passed away of a heart attack in 1939. With the death of William, Ruth Hunt became the single proprietor of the candy company. The death of her husband did not deter Ruth Hunt, as she was always ever expanding the business, now on her own by adding new products to the candy line. The most famous was the creation and naming of the Blue Monday candy bar. After a local pastor came into the candy factory and purchased a candy bar, he was quoted as to saying, "I go down to the store and get me a little sweet for my Blue Monday." One extreme bright spot of the early candy factory was that of candy cook Ernest Martin. Ernest came to work at the factory and served as cook, starting in 1938 and worked for over 50 years, retiring in 1988. With Ruth Hunt finding the running of the business to have become more and more strenuous as she was aging, contacted her daughter Emily Hunt and asked for her to come home and help her with the company. Emily Hunt, now Emily Peck, returned to Mount Sterling and after Ruth Hunt's much-needed retirement became full owner of the Ruth Hunt Candy Company in 1966. Sadly, after a long illness, the namesake of the Ruth Hunt Candy Company, Ruth Hunt, passed away October 5th, 1966, at the age of 74. Her name and legacy have lived on now for over 100 years, with the same quality and care that she started in 1921.
My name's William Cowell Peck.
And I'm Ruth Hunt Peck Wood. We just spent all of our childhood at the candy factory. We weren't home with a babysitter. We were at the candy factory.
That's right.
That's right. And all day, every day, all summer.
Eating candy.
Eating candy, getting into mischief.
My grandmother carried me around on her hip during most of the day while she worked. She was running up and down the steps all day. And she just had a direction to her that was...
She was committed, totally.
Mm-hmm.
She worked constantly, just nonstop. Starting a business as a woman young at that time. No one else was doing that.
Well, she's very, to me, just wonderful woman to this day.
Mother was in college in Virginia, and when her father died. So my grandmother, Ruth Hunt, called Mother home and said, "You must come home and help me." So Mother did not go back to school, and she regretted that, I think. And she'd made some friends, and she was young, like 20. But anyway, Ruth Hunt needed her, and Mother obeyed and came back and started in the candy business right then.
Yeah, she had never made a piece of candy. Mother hadn't. It was all grandmother. It was all Ruth doing. Mother never. Mother ran the business part of it until she had to start making candy when grandmother got sick.
Emily Peck ran the Ruth Hunt Candy Company with the same passion and drive as her mother and father before her. Mrs. Peck made several upgrades to the brand and candy line. Mrs. Peck also added 3 brand new recipes, including the famed bourbon ball. During the years of Mrs. Peck's ownership, both Presidents Johnson and Nixon placed orders for the famed Kentucky candy and was shipped to the White House.
But Mother was absolutely dedicated to continue Ruth Hunt's vision and work. And she did invent these bourbon balls, yes. And I remember she said, "I hope our mother doesn't turn over in her grave because of bourbon in the candy factory." Yes, hard.
After 22 years in the candy business, Emily Peck decided it was time to step away and let a new owner guide the company into the future.
Mother knew that she was slowing down.
And she wasn't keeping up with the new technology and the new...
No, she wouldn't.
She wouldn't change.
She wouldn't change
anything.
And I certainly tried. But she stuck with her mother's way of doing things.
Absolutely.
Everything, and all the business changed.
I think she realized that time was moving on.
Yeah, she
and
wanted to enjoy the rest
she
of her
wanted
life.
to, yes,
And
have some free time to herself.
And that's when Mr. Kiesel came in through an acquaintance.
Yes, a friend of
And
mine.
took on the monumental job of modernizing the company.
Emily Peck decided it was time to step away and let a new owner guide the company into the future. The candy company was purchased by Larry Kiesel in 1989, with Kiesel making big changes by moving the factory off of Old U.S. Highway 60 to North Maysville Road near I-64. Emily Peck retired and traveled the world, still checking in on the company from time to time until her death at the age of 90 in 2009.
I think I was too young to feel like I was in over my head, but I definitely felt almost overwhelmed in the amount of work that was necessary to turn it around and move forward. In fact, I called Mrs. Peck when we decided we were going to move, which was Ruth Hunt's daughter, and she just lives up the street here on Maysville Street, and I said, Miss Peck, I got to ask you something. Do you think we're making a mistake if we move out of the old building and move down closer to the expressway? And she said, "No, I am so excited about it for you. I'll be sad that you're leaving that old building that we had for 50 or 60 years, but I know it's the right thing to do. When Mother built the building in the first place, she put it on Old 60 because that's where all the traffic was, and you're just doing exactly the same thing that she did, only you're putting it near 64. Started out, a friend of mine in Louisville, Pee Wee Watkins, knew people at Brown Forman, and she said, "You should be the official candies for this new bourbon that's coming out, or you should make their bourbon balls," or something like that. And so she set me up with a meeting there at Brown Forman headquarters. And it just so happens that Mrs. Peck was in this fellow's mother's wedding. And so I asked Mrs. Peck if she'd like to go with me to the distillery area. So Miss Peck was all excited. She got all dressed up and ready to go, and we went and spent the day together at the Woodford distillery location and took our bourbon balls, and they loved them, and we came to an agreement, and they said, yeah, that's a good idea. This old company in Mount Sterling can do the bourbon balls for Woodford Reserve.
You know, our strategy when we came in was, you know, we wasn't changing recipes or formulas. We wanted to focus on marketing, so, you know, what's more traditional in Kentucky than the Derby and then Ruth Hunt and Blue Mondays. So anyway, we just made the contact then, and it really was successful in that, you know, we hardly anyone outside of Kentucky, unless they had lived around here, had heard of Ruth Hunt, but pretty much everyone in the world's heard of the Kentucky Derby. So it was an opportunity for us to expand our name outside the state, and it worked really well. I mean, we had some packaging that was similar to our traditional horse theme, and you know, it was successful for many years.
Toby Moore came on as co-owner of the Ruth Hunt Candy Company in 2016 and has helped Larry guide the company into a new era. Ruth Hunt Candy is well known not only in Kentucky, but around the United States, with its products being used and promoted far and wide.
Well, anytime you have a legacy business like that that's been able to make it for a century of operations, that's you know, having owned my own business now for 20 years, it's a difficult thing to manage all the cash flow, to manage personnel, so I'm thrilled for Larry, I'm thrilled for Toby, and I mean, Ruth Hunt to me in my career has been an amazing gift. So when Christopher and I opened up the Holly Hill Inn, May 9th, 2001, we wanted to have Ruth Hunt mint melt-aways with every guest check. And so Larry sold it to us in bulk, and we gave away chocolates with every guest check. So Ruth Hunt is a special company. Larry's a special man. And their product is impeccable. And I've used it in countless ways. I mean, it's the basis for every one of our chocolate bourbon pecan pies. We use their chocolate exclusively in all of our baking and our chocolate chip cookies, everything. But we've used the Blue Monday candy bars. We use the chocolate covered toffees. We just love what they do. Ruth Hunt Candy is an iconic brand for Kentucky. For a century, they've been making these perfect chocolates, the sorghum suckers, the hand-wrapped caramels. And these things become part of our celebration, part of our food culture. And generation after generation, we go back to those sweets, and we forget how important they really are for us. And for me, personally, they bring me back to moments in time. So absolutely, when you have that kind of a legacy, that kind of continuity of operation, you're really going to make a memory for people.
Ruth Hunt is the oldest company name in Montgomery County, 100 years old. That is amazing. They have fallen to the wayside. I mean, the businesses just don't last that long. It's amazing. And it's only had Mama and her daughter and Larry and Toby. Something that has been there that people can take pride in. It is a big tourist attraction. It is also a national candy now. And so I think that is the key to what it means to Montgomery County and Mount Sterling.
Well, to start off, I've been with Larry 31 years, ever since he's owned the place. Wonderful people to work for. And it's just been amazing to see the changes and better. I mean, it was hard work back then, but you had it the old ways. I'll be honest, I've enjoyed it all. And that's the reason I'm still here. I mean, I'm home by myself, and the kids say, why don't you quit? But I've always loved what I've done.
I have every confidence that this business will continue. And when he's ready to pass it on, the next generation of operators will adhere to the same principles that Ruth Hunt started. You know, perfect ingredients, great recipes, consistency in preparation, and a dedication to quality.
Yeah, I just think being recognized as, good people that were in business, not just to make money, but to help employees, help the community. It's not all about the dollars and cents. It's, like I said, sort of like a small family within the community. And, when people need help, you help them, and, they reward you by being loyal customers. And so it's, hope that we're remembered for the, I guess, the pleasure that we provide people with offering the traditional gifts and things that, the founders started 100 years ago.
Number of times that I've seen people in the parking lot taking photos of this building because they have some memory. They're either going to share it with their grandmother that's across the country and say, "Look, Grandma, we came to your old favorite Ruth Hunt Candies," or Christmas cards that we get from, "I'm sending this to my sister," and the note that's going in the box is, "Remember, this is what Grandma used to bring us." And they just just have so many good memories about Ruth Hunt Candies in there, that's mixed in their life experiences, that it makes them happy.
Simple sugar, confectionery, chocolate. All of these things bring up a myriad of memories. We all remember the first taste of something so sweet that it brought us joy. Something that made us stop, even for just 1 second, to think about how this piece of simple sugar and chocolate made us feel. That memory forever stays inside of us. We remember the simple things, the laughs, friends, family, and the exact moment when we first tasted that sweetness. Ruth Hunt Candy Company has been providing this sweet experience to Kentucky and the world now for over 100 years. A century of quality, giving, and kinship. What all started 100 years ago in a small kitchen now lives on in each and every person that has tried Ruth Hunt Candy. The history of Ruth Hunt Candy is that of quality, tragedy, triumph, and achievement. From a home kitchen serving cream candy to friends, to the modern day having products shipped and enjoyed all over the world. Ruth Hunt Candy at 100 is still placing those smiles on the faces of all who enjoy that sweet taste. So here is to the Ruth Hunt Candy Company at 100 years old. You are a Kentucky original. You are Kentucky proud. And always remember, when you hear the name of Ruth Hunt Candy, all those smiling faces for over 100 years.